Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Warner Draw Watershed Gould Wash Flood Protection Project. A draft supplemental watershed plan and environmental impact statement, hereinafter referred to as draft plan EIS, has been prepared and is available for public review and comment. This is a pre-recorded presentation to provide information on the project. During this presentation, we will go over the project team members, the NRCS project phases, problems and opportunities identified during the planning process, the alternatives developed and the analysis completed on them, the planning schedule and next steps, and we will end the presentation with information on how to submit a comment for the project and where to find additional information. The team for the Gould Wash Flood Protection Project involves many agencies and organizations. The lead federal agency and engineers on the project is the U.S. Department of Agriculture Natural Resources Conservation Service, or NRCS. The project sponsors include Washington County and Hurricane City. Several cooperating agencies are on board due to jurisdictional responsibilities. The Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, is involved due to project measures proposed on lands managed by the agency. Gould Wash has been determined to be a jurisdictional water of the U.S., regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, or USACE, under the Clean Water Act. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has jurisdictional responsibilities under Section 102(2)(c) of the National Environmental Policy Act and Section 309 of the Clean Air Act. Adaptive environmental planning is aiding in preparation of the Plan EIS for NRCS. As noted previously, this project is being partially funded by NRCS. This is accomplished through the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act, or PL 83566 funding. The project is completed and funded under three separate phases. First, for planning. Phase 2 is final design, and Phase 3 is construction. We're currently in the planning phase, which includes preparation of a Plan EIS to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act. Once we complete the planning process, funding can be requested for the next project phase, final design. At this point, you may be asking, what is NEPA and why is it required for this project? Well, anytime there's federal funding or federal actions tied to a project, which there is through NRCS funding, you're required to comply with NEPA. And the NEPA analysis is really just an assessment of alternatives and their environmental effects. This assessment helps to eliminate or reduce damage to the environment. Through the process, there's also decision-making that helps to ensure wise use of taxpayer dollars. The decision-making selects alternatives that maximize environmental, economic, and social benefits for the public. A purpose and needs statement is required for the Plan EIS document and is the core component for the NEPA environmental analysis. It identifies why the project action is being undertaken and the objectives the project aims to achieve. For this project, the purpose is to provide flood prevention to reduce damage caused by floodwater from Gould Wash drainage in Hurricane City. This is needed to protect people, structures, transportation infrastructure, public utilities, and property within the developed areas of Hurricane City that are exposed to flooding. Problems and opportunities for the Supplemental Watershed Plan were identified during the planning process to help develop the purpose and need. The current NRCS Warner Draw Watershed is a large watershed at 298 square miles. However, this supplement to the Watershed Plan focuses on the Gould Wash drainage area, consisting of 64.5 square miles shaded blue in the map on the left. This area drains over the Hurricane Cliffs into Gould Wash, flows through Hurricane City, and dumps out into the Virgin River. Hurricane City is no stranger to flood events. Large damaging floods have been documented to occur in the city in 1930, 1955, and 1981, with other smaller floods in 1936, 39, 59, in the mid-60s, mid-70s, and 1989. Flood mapping by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, was not completed for Gould Wash until 2009. Prior to 2009, no FEMA mapping was available showing special flood hazard areas for the wash. Since the mapping was completed in 2009, the city has been working on solutions to address the flooding issues. But these solutions have not come easy due to the large drainage area and very high flood flows produced during a 100-year event. Recent mapping and modeling by Bowen Collins and Associates had found that the peak flood flow over Hurricane Cliffs was 8,820 CFS. The map on the right shows flooding associated with this 100-year flood event. Approximately 650 residences, 99 commercial businesses or offices, and 82 roads are inundated during this event. This overview map of channel capacities of Gould Wash through Hurricane City really provide good information when comparing to the peak flow at Hurricane Cliffs for various flood events on how dangerous flooding could be for the community. At a 5-year flood event, which has a 20% probability of occurring in any given year, a peak flow of 1,912 CFS would be produced. Sections of Gould Wash channel through Hurricane City, some have as low as 1,600 CFS capacity. So much flooding would start to occur at even a 5-year event. As we discussed earlier, the 100-year event has a flow of 8,820 CFS, which exceeds any of the capacities along Gould Wash through Hurricane City. You can see as the channel progresses, there is a comparison with peak flow at the 600 North Culvert, and that is at the north end of town. The flows substantially reduce from Hurricane Cliffs to the culvert because much of the water is exiting the channel, inundating the city. And this is what we see in the previous map shown of flooding performed by Bowen Collins and Associates, that much of the city is inundated at a 100-year flood event. With the limited channel capacity of Gould Wash through Hurricane City and the large flood volumes you see from the previous slide, you can really understand how important alternatives to reduce some of this flooding is for the community. This project looked at 18 action alternatives, but unfortunately, due to the very large flood volumes involved, not a lot of them were determined to be feasible. 2 action alternatives were determined to be feasible, and those were evaluated in detailed study in the Plan EIS NEPA document. They were also compared with a no action alternative that had continued flooding. During the analysis, a combination of benefits was compared to determine what the greatest economic, social, and environmental benefits could be achieved from the alternatives, and that alternative was selected as the NRCS preferred. Additionally, that same NRCS preferred alternative is the preferred alternative for the sponsors and complies with Section 404 permitting as the least environmentally damaging practical alternative for the Army Corps. We're going to go over now what I'm sure most people are interested in, which are the alternatives to reduce flooding. We're starting first with the alternative that was not selected as the preferred alternative. This consists of increasing the channel capacity of Gould Wash through Hurricane City to convey that 100-year flood flow of 8,820 CFS. You can see extensive modifications are required for the channel through town, including widening. There is approximately 7,590 linear feet of that channel that would require an engineered flood wall. That's due to the high velocities to protect the banks from erosion. You can see an example picture of that flood wall to the right. The bottom of the channel will maintain a natural channel bottom for infiltration of water. The remaining sections would be widened and armored with riprap. The riprap would be hidden with native soil placed over the top and seeded to reestablish vegetation. This creates a channel that would look similar to the natural channel banks now. In addition, there are multiple road crossings that would need to be replaced and upsized. This includes 3 bridge replacements and 4 culvert replacements. And you can imagine that these measures do not come cheap, so the cost to install these measures is quite high. This includes also the final design cost for engineering. It includes any permitting required for the project, the installation cost, and any easements that would need to be obtained. And that is $75,220,000. It is important to note with this alternative that with the channel widening and increased capacity to convey the full 8,820 CFS flow without providing any sediment retention benefits, additional sediment would deposit within the channel through Hurricane City during flood events. This would also require additional operations and maintenance activities to remove that sediment. Downstream of the channel improvements, there's going to be higher velocities and higher flow volumes all the way down to the Virgin River. The other action alternative, analyzed in detailed study in the Plan EIS, which was also selected as the preferred alternative for the project, consists of construction of a dry detention basin and dam upstream of Hurricane City on BLM managed lands, and some channel modifications to Gould Wash through Hurricane City. The dam would attenuate flood flows at events greater than approximately a 10-year flood. Below a 10-year flood, flows would freely pass through the dam. This reduces the peak flood flow during a 100-year event from 8,820 CFS over the hurricane cliffs down to 3,000 CFS. This dam would act similar to the adjoining Frog Hollow Dam and Detention Basin, where the basin is dry for the majority of the year, but only ponds and holds water during very large flood events. There are a couple borrow sources proposed to construct the earthen dam embankment nearby. Downstream in Hurricane City, the channel modifications are greatly reduced from the previous alternative. With the majority of Gould Wash through Hurricane City already meeting the 3,000 CFS capacity, really maintaining a natural channel cross-section that's consistent throughout the channel is the most important part. That and armoring to ensure erosion protection. The majority of the channel would have minor grading, maintain a channel bottom width of 30 feet or less, and be armored with soil placed over the top of the armoring and seeded similar to the last alternative. The bottom of the channel would be a natural open channel bottom to maintain water infiltration. A flood wall would still be required for a portion of the project. It's decreased from the last alternative down to 3,200 linear feet. The modifications for culverts is also substantially reduced, and only 2 culvert replacements are required for this alternative. The cost is substantially less, over $12 million less than the previous alternative, at $62,677,000. It is important to note for this alternative that the detention basin upstream would be designed with a capacity to accommodate 100 years worth of sediment. This would reduce the amount of sediment flowing downstream and depositing in Gould Wash through Hurricane City. The flood velocities and flows would also be reduced downstream of the dam and the channel improvements all the way to the Virgin River. As you can see, these preferred alternative modifications allow safe conveyance for a 100-year flood flow through Hurricane City. In comparison to the existing conditions with the map on the left, you can see much of the city inundated. After installation of the preferred alternative measures, no flooding would occur during a 100-year flood, and the flows would be contained within the channel banks. Environmental consequences of the alternatives were analyzed in great detail in the Plan EIS document. Please refer to the Plan EIS document that can be downloaded from the NRCS project website for this detailed analysis. The table here is only to provide a brief summary of the short-term and long-term effects from implementation of alternative actions. The short-term effects during construction include temporary disturbance to soil, vegetation, water, and wildlife for both alternatives. However, best management practices conservation measures and pre-construction surveys would be implemented to avoid or reduce these impacts, and areas would be restored after construction completion. There are temporary noise nuisances and decreased visual quality associated with the alternative actions from construction disturbance and construction noise. Temporary traffic detours would be required for bridge and for culvert replacements. The increased channel capacity for 8,820 CFS would have substantially more traffic detours than the dam and 3,000 CFS channel modifications alternative. When looking at the measurable effects after implementation of the alternatives, we see that there are slight differences between the increased channel capacity through Hurricane for the 8,820 CFS and the new detention dam and 3,000 CFS channel modifications. Because the 8,820 CFS not only causes more sediment to be conveyed through the channel, it also increases the flood flows and velocities through the channel and downstream of the channel improvements. This has adverse effects of increased erosion potential in Gould Wash downstream to the Virgin River. It also increases sediment deposition in Gould Wash. The sediment deposition will require more frequent O&M activities to remove, thereby increasing disturbance to vegetation and wildlife along Gould Wash through Hurricane City. The increased flows could also have potential adverse effects to the vegetation and wildlife at the Virgin River confluence during those large flood events. Alternately, the new detention dam and 3,000 CFS channel modifications has a benefit of decreased erosion potential in Gould Wash downstream of the dam and channel improvements and reduced sediment deposition. This would reduce the sediment removal O&M activities and benefit vegetation and wildlife with less disturbance along Gould Wash through Hurricane City. The reduced flood flows would also provide a benefit to vegetation and wildlife from less damaging effects during high flood flows at the confluence with the Virgin River. Both projects have a benefit of improved flood flow conveyance. However, the dam and 3,000 CFS channel modifications alternative also has an additional water quality improvement benefit. Both alternatives provide the same flood damage reduction for the human environment and benefit property and improve public health and safety. There is an adverse effect of increased frequency in O&M construction noise nuisance from the 8,820 CFS, while there is reduced noise nuisance from the 3,000 CFS channel modifications with less O&M activities for sediment removal. As mentioned previously, NRCS is providing partial funding for this project through PL 83566. NRCS does cover flood prevention measures at 100% for the construction. However, the sponsor is required to cover the cost for the permitting, for any real property rights, and also for culvert and bridge replacements. We see there's a substantial difference in cost to the sponsor from the 8820 CFS alternative versus the 3000 CFS alternative. When we compare annual cost to benefits, we also see that the 3000 CFS alternative has a greater net economic benefit. A detailed economic analysis was completed for the project to ensure economic feasibility of the alternatives and to determine which alternative provides the greatest benefit for the local community. It was determined to be the new detention dam and 3,000 CFS channel modifications alternative, with a total net annual benefit of $563,000 from reduced flooding. Now that we have reviewed the alternative information and environmental evaluation, let's discuss where we are at in the planning process and the next steps. We are currently in phase 1 for planning, and the draft Plan EIS for the Gould Wash Flood Protection Project has been prepared and is available for public review and comment. The comment period opened on September 22, 2025 for a 45-day review comment schedule. However, due to the government shutdown, the comment period has been extended and will end on January 5, 2026. NRCS, the sponsors and cooperating agencies, are soliciting comments on the draft Plan EIS. Please send your comments by January 5th of 2026 so they can become part of the public record. A final Plan EIS will be prepared that addresses the comments received during the draft Plan EIS comment period, and the watershed agreement will be signed. This is anticipated to be completed in March of 2026, and the final Plan EIS, along with the watershed agreement, will be made available for public review over a 45-day window. After the final Plan EIS 45-day window is over, a Record of Decision, or ROD, can be issued. This is the end of the planning process for the project. The ROD is anticipated to be issued in June of 2026. After completion of planning, funding can be requested for Phase 2 of the project, Final Design. If you would like to review the Plan EIS document, it can be downloaded from the NRCS project website. The QR code and website address are provided on this slide. Please submit any written comments by January 5th, 2026 to Anders Fillerup with NRCS. You can submit comments by email, mail, or phone. The information for Anders Fillerup, email, mailing address, and phone number are provided on this slide. We thank you for your interest in the Gould Wash Flood Protection Project. If you have any further questions, please direct them to Anders Fillerup with NRCS.